I thought I'd seen it all when it came to HOA drama, but then I met Karen Whitmore. She wasn't just the president of our Sunset Ridge Homeowners Association, she was the self-appointed queen of it. For Karen, the HOA wasn't about keeping the neighborhood nice. It was her personal kingdom. What started as a small landscaping disagreement eventually turned into her demanding that I pay her personal electric bill, and yes, calling 911 when I refused. It all began about 3 months ago when I moved into what was supposed to be a peaceful suburban neighborhood. The homes were beautiful, the lawns were perfect, and the HOA fees seemed reasonable. What I didn't realize was that Karen had been running the association like her private empire for 5 straight years. Most of the other board members had long since given up trying to reason with her. The first red flag showed up during my initial week there. Karen knocked on my door, holding a massive 3-inch binder full of updated regulations. None of them were in the official HOA documents I'd received. She stood there in her spotless khakis and perfectly ironed polo shirt, clipboard in hand, explaining how she had personally improved the community standards. Now, as you can see in Section 12.4, she said, flipping through pages like a drill sergeant, lawn maintenance must be performed every Saturday between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., no exceptions. I personally inspect every yard on Sunday mornings. I raised an eyebrow. The original HOA documents just say lawns should be maintained regularly, I replied. They don't mention specific times. Karen's smile tightened. Well, I've updated those outdated guidelines. These new rules protect our property values. That should have been my first clue to start documenting everything. But I thought I could handle one overzealous HOA president. I was wrong. The real trouble began when I hired a landscaping company to install native plants in my front yard. I'd done my research, got all the necessary permits, and even double-checked the HOA covenants to make sure everything was compliant. The plants were drought-resistant, beautiful, and 100% legal. The morning after the installation, Karen showed up, face red, clipboard in hand. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, pointing at my new garden. "Those plants are not on the approved list." I stepped outside with my copy of the HOA documents. According to this, I said, homeowners can plant any drought-resistant native species. These California poppies and lavender bushes meet all the requirements. "Those covenants are outdated," she said sharply, flipping through her own notes. "I've created new guidelines that require pre-approval for any landscaping changes. You'll need to remove these immediately and replant with approved grass varieties." "Show me where those new rules were legally adopted by the HOA board," I asked. Karen's eyes narrowed. "I am the HOA board," she said, "and I'm telling you those plants need to go." That's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a strict president. I was dealing with someone who'd completely lost touch with reality. Over the next few weeks, things escalated fast. Karen started leaving violation notices on my door almost every day, each one more ridiculous than the last. One day, I got cited for leaving my trash cans visible for more than 30 minutes. The next day, she fined me for parking my own car in my driveway during non-designated hours. A few days later, she claimed my curtains were the wrong shade of white. Every notice came with a fine, amounts that weren't listed anywhere in the official HOA documents. She was just making them up as she went along. I ignored the nonsense, but that only made her angrier. Karen started showing up at my house multiple times a day and taking pictures of my property from different angles and leaving long handwritten notes about my continued defiance. Then came the moment that officially crossed the line. One afternoon, I checked my mailbox and found an envelope from the HOA. Inside was a bill for $437.62, but it wasn't an HOA fine or a community fee. It was Karen's personal electric bill. She'd attached a sticky note that read, "Your non-compliance has forced me to work extra hours managing your violations. You owe me for the additional electricity used in my home office." I actually laughed out loud. I mean, who does that? That evening, I walked over to her house with the bill in hand. She opened the door wearing rubber gloves and holding a spray bottle, clearly in the middle of one of her obsessive cleaning sessions. "I think you accidentally put this in my mailbox," I said, handing her the bill. Her face lit up like I'd just brought her good news. "Oh, no, that's correct," she said confidently. "As I mentioned, your repeated violations have forced me to spend extra hours working on community matters. I had to use more electricity in my home office, so naturally you're responsible for the cost." I blinked at her. "Karen, you can't bill homeowners for your personal utility expenses. That's not how any of this works." But she wasn't listening. "According to my calculations," she continued, "you owe me for 3 months of increased electricity usage plus a processing fee. Payment is due within 10 business days or I'll take legal action." "I'm not paying your electric bill," I said flatly. "This is harassment and you need to stop." Her smile vanished. "We'll see about that," she said coldly, and slammed the door in my face. At that moment, I should have known she wasn't done, but I had no idea how far she was willing to take this. 2 days later, I was working from home when I heard sirens. A police car pulled up right in front of my house. 2 officers stepped out, and behind them, there she was, Karen, clutching her clipboard and practically glowing with excitement. I opened the door before they could knock. "Good afternoon, officers. Is there a problem?" I asked. The older officer, a calm-looking man in his 50s, checked his notepad. "We received a call about theft of services and refusal to pay legally mandated fees," he said. "The caller claims you owe money to the Homeowners Association." I glanced over at Karen. She stood there with her arms crossed and a smug grin. "I'm current on all my HOA fees," I said. "My automatic payment went through last week." Karen quickly stepped forward. "That's not what this is about. He owes me $437.62 for administrative costs related to his violations. When someone refuses to pay legally mandated fees, that's theft of services." The younger officer frowned. "Ma'am, are you saying he owes the Homeowners Association this money?" "No," Karen said proudly. "He owes it to me personally. My home office electricity has gone up because of all the hours I've spent documenting his non-compliance." The officers looked at each other, and you could see the realization on their faces. The older one cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we can't arrest someone for refusing to pay your personal electric bill. That's a civil issue, not a criminal one." Karen's face turned red. "But he's stealing my services." "I've been providing administrative work for the HOA. Did he request this work?" the younger officer asked. "Well, no, but did he sign anything agreeing to pay you?" Karen hesitated. "Not exactly." "Then it's not a crime," the officer said firmly. "If you think he owes you money, you'll need to file a civil claim. But calling 911 over a private billing dispute is not appropriate," the older officer added. "And ma'am, if you continue to make false reports, you could face charges for misuse of emergency services." Karen stood there speechless. You could almost see the fantasy collapsing in her head, the idea that being HOA president made her the law. After the police left, she just stood in my driveway staring at my house for a long time before storming back inside. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. I honestly thought after that police visit, Karen would back off. But if anything, it made her even more obsessed. Within days, the violation notices returned. And this time, they were borderline insane. She accused me of having aggressive landscaping, choices that intimidate neighbors. Then came another for displaying non-approved outdoor furniture, followed by one for maintaining a driveway that reflects sunlight in a disruptive manner. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. Each fake violation came with an even higher fine: $500 for environmental noncompliance, $750 for architectural insubordination, and $1,000 for willful disregard of community harmony standards. At this point, it was clear Karen wasn't just enforcing fake rules. She was running a full-blown fantasy government out of her living room. When I continued to ignore her, she decided to go nuclear. 2 weeks after the first police visit, she called 911 again. This time, she told them I was destroying community property values and demanded my immediate arrest for grand theft of neighborhood equity. Yes, those were her actual words. The same 2 officers showed up again, looking more tired than before. "Ma'am," the older officer sighed, "this is the 3rd time you've called us about civil disputes with your neighbor." We've already explained these are not criminal matters. But he's causing thousands of dollars in property damage, Karen protested. That has to count as vandalism or destruction of property. The younger officer rubbed his forehead. Having plants you don't like isn't vandalism, he said. And property values aren't something someone can steal. At that point, I realized Karen had officially lost all grip on reality. Enough was enough. I'd kept records of everything. Every fake violation. Every photo she took. Every ridiculous fine she tried to issue. I even saved the electric bill incident and both 911 call reports. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the state's Department of Real Estate, the agency that oversees HOA operations. I also submitted a harassment complaint to the local police department and mailed a certified letter to every homeowner in the community. In that letter, I detailed every one of Karen's unauthorized rule changes, her personal billing attempts, and the fact that she'd repeatedly misused emergency services. The response was immediate. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd been targeting. Within days, neighbors started reaching out. People who'd been too intimidated to speak up before. One had been fined $800 for having unfriendly garden decorations. Another had been cited for parking a work truck in his own driveway overnight. Once they realized they weren't alone, something incredible happened. The entire neighborhood united. Within 2 weeks, we had enough signatures for an emergency HOA meeting and a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership. The day of the emergency HOA meeting felt like the entire neighborhood had finally woken up. Every seat in the community hall was filled. People who hadn't attended a meeting in years were there, arms crossed, ready for answers. Karen sat at the front like a queen about to defend her throne. She had her binder full of violations and her smug little smile, like she still believed she could talk her way out of everything. When the meeting started, our community treasurer stood up first. He cleared his throat and said, "Before we begin, I want to state that the board never approved any of the new fines or policies Mrs. Karen initiated. None of her actions were authorized." The room went silent. Karen's face froze. For the first time, she didn't have a script ready. Then came the evidence. My certified letters, copies of the fake violation notices, screenshots of her emails, even the 911 call reports. Each one hit harder than the last. By the time the floor opened for questions, the neighbors had turned on her completely. One woman stood up and said, "You fined me for planting roses." A man in the back shouted, "You made my wife cry over patio furniture." Karen tried to shout over them, "I was maintaining order. I was protecting property values." But no one was listening anymore. The vote was quick. 28 in favor of removal. 0 opposed. Karen was officially removed as HOA President on the spot, but the story didn't end there. The state's Department of Real Estate got involved after my complaint. They launched an audit into all of Karen's HOA activity, the fines, the fake charges, the misuse of community funds. Turns out, Karen had been pocketing money from those unofficial fines for over a year. The total? Just over $50,000. She was fined heavily by the state, permanently banned from holding any HOA position again, and ordered to repay every cent she'd taken. As for me, the guy she called 911 on for not paying her bills, I got a handwritten letter of apology through her attorney. And the neighborhood? Peaceful again. No fake violations, no absurd rules. Just people finally living their lives without fear of a clipboard and a Karen. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't just fix your own problem. It exposes the entire system that lets people like her thrive. And honestly, watching her go from power-drunk HOA queen to neighborhood cautionary tale was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen.